Okay, so we are 1 minute past the hour, so why don't we get started? So welcome to this webinar put on by Pearl Capital. We are crafting a unique brand and image for your ISO business. And this is a really interesting topic, and I hope you'll enjoy it as well. I think it's very common for, particularly in the financial services industry. I've been doing, in the financial services industry now for 23 years. For those of you who have seen the Pearl Capital webinars we've been working on before, you'll see that in one of the slides coming up as well. But there is an amazing amount of sameness in the financial services industry. Everybody has the same products. They typically tend to use the same imagery when they're talking about their products and their brand and so forth. I mean, on the financial investment side, you see just an insane amount of sailboats, right? And things like that. So there's a lot of sameness. So how do you want to stand out from the competition? That's really what we're going to talk about today as we dive into branding for your ISO business. And it really does matter, right? What your customers think of you and what the prospects think of you and the image they get when they come in contact with your business. So as with other webinars in this series by Pearl Capital, we do urge you to connect with the Pearl team on social media, so whatever you use or all of the ones that you use. So feel free to connect with them on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and they are on YouTube as well. So you'll find this webinar after it's done and completed and recorded. In the next few days, you'll find that up on YouTube in high quality, full HD, so you'll be able to go check it out, review it, share it with the rest of the members of your team if they didn't happen to join us today. As with previous webinars, we do have a hashtag here, so if you want to tweet about it and get conversations going on with the Pearl team, but also with your fellow ISOs and people that are at other firms that you may interact with, you can use the hashtag Pearl brand for this particular webinar. And as always, our man Grant Pastor, whose account we're using here, is the guy behind the scenes of all these social accounts. So do say hi to Grant. Really great guy. Love working with him, particularly very personable, and he's quick to offer any assistance he can for you and your business. As I mentioned before, my name is Mike Langford. Pearl Capital and my firm, finservMarketing, we have a relationship where we're kind of leading the charge here to help you and your business because as I've talked about in the previous webinars, there's a pretty astute recognition on behalf of the Pearl team that what's really holding some ISOs back from the success that they want is just a lack of hardcore marketing knowledge, right? And it's not that the ISO communities aren't smart enough to get it, obviously. It's just that, very often we get our business started, we get rolling, and we haven't stopped to think about some broader marketing stuff. So they brought me and finservMarketing in to help out with that. And so finservMarketing is a digital marketing firm that focuses exclusively on the financial services vertical. If it's happened in financial services or in fintech, I've probably seen it. And I'm really, really excited to be working with the Pearl Capital team. And if you ever have any questions, as I've said before on these webinars, please do feel free to reach out to me directly if there's any marketing related questions. I've actually, over the course of several of these last webinars, I've had individual phone calls, individual emails with many of the ISOs who have attended. And I typically learn a lot about your business and hopefully I'm able to help. So that's why we're here. You can follow me on Twitter. You see down there, I'm at Mike Langford on Twitter. I'm also pretty much Mike Langford on every social media thing, so you'll be able to find me there pretty easily. So let's dive into it. The importance of your brand. And it sounds kind of silly. Everybody's like, well, I've got a brand, I've got a logo, and it's the first thing that we think of, right? What is my brand? But your brand is much more than just your logo and the color scheme on your website. It's everything. As Seth Godin says here, and if you don't know who Seth Godin is, he's kind of a marketing guru, for a lack of a better word. He's written a ton of books on marketing, and he's a frequent speaker on marketing, and he's got a really well followed blog, and he's one of the few people in the world that if you just Google his first name, you'll find him. If you just Google Seth, you'll find Seth Godin. Really good dude, really smart man. And what I like about him is that he always kind of boils things down into simple stuff. And I always think that that's an indication of are you doing things smartly, right? If you can explain a complex thing and break it down into language that everybody in the world can understand, regardless of their background. So he mentions, hey, listen, a brand is a set of expectations, memories, and stories and relationships that taken together account for your consumers, in your case, the small business owner's decision to choose one product or service over another. And just stop and think about that. Let that sink in about what do your customers think about your business? And you personally, when you're making purchasing decisions, whether it's for your home life or out in the world for your business, why do you make some of those decisions? And more often than not, it's not all logical, right? It's not all like, well, there's a price match, does this match, right? Sometimes there's an emotional component to it. I feel more comfortable with this brand. I like the way this makes me feel. I like the smell of this thing over the smell of this thing, right? Lots of things go into how we experience a brand. And a friend of mine once said that, the brand is kind of the aftertaste that a customer has after experiencing your product or service or just your company in general. And I like that concept, that when somebody comes in contact with you, there is a bit of an aftertaste, a bit of a memory that they have. And sometimes they can't quite define it, but it is there. And it'll shape whether they do business with you again, whether they give you a second phone call, frankly, so you can close their business the first time, or whether they might refer business to you. A lot of that stuff goes into it. So let's kind of take a look at two brands. So brands do have value, and that value comes in a variety of different ways. So I thought it would be kind of fun to do a little bit of a comparison here. And usually when you do one of these, the obvious answer is the opposite, right? So which brand has more value, is more valuable in the world, right? So Dollar Tree or Tiffany, right? Well, as far as market cap goes, Dollar Tree is worth $16.4 billion. It's traded on the stock exchange, whereas Tiffany is only worth $11.7 billion. Now, listen, they're both incredibly valuable. They approach business differently. Their customers completely different. They're both multi-billion-dollar organizations. But if you Google like the value of Tiffany's brand, like the actual Tiffany name, that brand name is actually worth $6 billion. Whereas Dollar Tree, one could argue that brand is worth nothing, because there's Dollar General and there's all sorts of other dollar whatever vendors out there that if one were to buy the other, the brand itself isn't worth anything. It's the business that's worth $16.4 billion. So there's actual value and there's perceived value for the brand. Now let's take a look at some of the other things that come to mind when you think of these brands, because it's a set of imagery. When somebody thinks of your company, it isn't just thinking of the document that you sent over, it's thinking like everything, right? So when I think of Dollar Tree, I think of value shopping, I think clarity of pricing, everything's a buck, it's kind of in the name, right? There's no status. I'm not thinking, oh man, I need status. In fact, one could argue it's anti-status, right? If you're somebody who's into saving money and you don't really care what the brand is on something, you're going to go pay $1 for it. Why would you spend $2.99 at the grocery store where you can spend $1? I would argue that it's more often than not people who shop or shopping there, when they think of Dollar Tree, they're thinking of their must-haves. They're not thinking of anything else. They're thinking needs-based. They kind of know it's low quality, some cast-offs from major retailers and so forth. And they're looking for convenience too, right? A Dollar Tree can't be out in the middle of nowhere, or it's got to be convenient to shoppers, right? Because many of them, frankly, might be on the bus line, or it just might not have the luxury of time to drive all over creation. Now, when we think of Tiffany, we think luxury shopping, right? From a pricing perspective, my mother always used to say, it's an expensive place. If they don't show you the price tag, it's if you have to ask the price, you probably can't afford it type of. A lot of ego and prestige involved. We kind of intrinsically know it's high quality because of the price and the glitz and glamour. And it's exclusive. It's only in certain shopping areas, right? Your regular run-of-the-mill mall doesn't have a Tiffany in it. It's usually the super high-end shopping area that's close to a major metropolitan area that's got a Tiffany. Now, what do customers expect, right? That's different. What customers think of when they think of the business, like the imagery that they have of the business, is a little bit different than what they expect when they go to the store. It's hard to put your finger on it, but there's there is some set of expectations when you go to shop at a Dollar Tree or something like that, a discount retailer, let's call it, versus when you go to Tiffany. So when I go to Dollar Tree, it's not just about low prices, I want to see a large variety of products, right? If it was just like one item for $1, it might not be as successful. I need a lot of SKUs, a lot of items for sale. I like that everything's priced for $1, so I know what to expect when I go in there. I do expect it to be reasonably clean if I was shopping at a dollar store. I know it's not going to be as big as a Walmart or your major supermarket. It's going to have a relatively small footprint by comparison. Probably not expecting high quality customer service or any customer service really at all, much of it. And then of course, probably your plastic shopping bags and so forth, right? So the experience is, I've got it in my head. I know what I'm going to get when I go in there, and hopefully the brand is consistent with that. Now, when it comes to Tiffany's, I'm expecting relatively few items, but they're going to be beautiful items, and they're going to be under glass, and the store is going to be miraculously clean, right? High-end decor. You see here in the picture, there's also the glass and chrome and polished up everything. You're going to get white glove service, right? There's an armed guard at the door at every Tiffany's. So that kind of lets you know, like, hey, valuable stuff in here, people who need to be protected, you're safe in here with all your expensive stuff. We'll keep the rabble out, right, type of concept. And then, of course, the packaging, that famous blue box and the little ribbon and so forth, very famous for Tiffany's. But these are a set of expectations that the customer has over time. And regardless of the actual value of the product, it's there, right? The expectation is a part of the value prop. But at the end of the day, what do the customers remember? It's kind of the same thing, right? It's, your brand is their story. And I love the fact that, if you think about it, a mom who's, getting back to school stuff for her kids and buying food items at a discount or whatever, or cleaning supplies for the house or whatever, has the same, like the memories, the experiences that allow them to live the life they want to live as a Tiffany buyer who's buying that engagement ring and maybe spending tens of thousands of dollars on jewelry. There's still a memory that happens there. Now, it might not always be the same type of memory, right? That you're looking at the diamond ring every day and it came from Tiffany's versus the mom who just really appreciates that she can buy things for her. But everything that went into the experience, the color, the choices of how you're going to interact with the customers, the location, it all came down to brand, and it created a memory. And the same is true for your business as an ISO. So what does your brand say? Well, hopefully it says yes, right? Hopefully it says to the customer, yes, you came to the right place. You should shop here, right? We can help you solve your financial challenges. So here we're dealing with, in Pearl's case, merchant capital advance, right? Most of the customers who come in the door need money quickly, right? And they may not have as many options as other business owners, or as they would like to have as a business owner. So there's some level of urgency. But here's the thing, they do have choices. There are lots of other ISOs out there. There are a lot of opportunities for that business owner to go solve their capital needs in a hurry. So why should they choose you? Really simply put. So who's your customer? I like this notion that, just because everybody is many of your customers that you're coming in contact with, the small business owners you're coming in contact with, are in similar situations. They're cash poor and they lack access to other credit options or other capital options in the time frame in which they need to secure that capital. But that doesn't mean they're all the same type of person they're going to be receptive to the same types of messages. I like the notion here. Many Mercedes drivers are cash poor. There's a fantastic book that I read probably 15, 20 years ago called The Millionaire Next Door. And if you haven't read it, highly recommend you read it. And The book is not about branding, but it'll teach you a lot about your customer. One of the things that really stuck with me is that many of the people you see driving high-end cars, wearing expensive suits, having the latest watch and so forth, are close to being just as poor as the person who drives a Honda, right? They're spending almost everything they make, right? A lot of professionals, a lot of doctors and lawyers and so forth are spending to look like they're Mr. Doctor and Mrs. Doctor and attorneys and so forth. They're trying to spend to live to the lifestyle that is expected of them. So they're equally as cash poor. That being said, ego, right? It's really powerful, right? A Mercedes driver who is cash poor, many of them would sooner die than downgrade to a Kia, even though the Kia is probably a good car. It has a lot of the same luxury features, they've been doing a lot to improve the powertrain, so they're just as quick and so forth. There's just something different. They're not walking into a Kia dealership, and they're certainly not rolling into their expensive tawny suburb and pulling into their garage with the Kia when all their neighbors are driving Mercedes and BMWs and so forth. So the big question is, does it make sense if you're going after the Mercedes driver, that higher end client, the big game hunting we talked about in last month's webinar? Can you use the same branding to go after that player? And the answer is you probably shouldn't. He's probably not going to respond to Kia style branding, even though the Kia might be, it's effectively under everything. It's the same product, right? 4 wheels, engine, transmission, goes fast on the highway, get you where you need to go, right? Shiny paint, all that type of stuff. It's the same product basically. So your MCA is going to be the same as every other ISO MCA solution, especially if you're running it through Pearl. If you're bringing the same customer to Pearl, they're going to get the same pricing. Challenge is, will your branding resonate with that person? So what are you projecting to that customer? And who would you assume are your customers? If you looked at your branding and the interaction and everything you're putting out into the world, who would we assume is your customer? There's no wrong answer, right? Walmart makes a ton of money, huge, right? And they make it pennies at a time, right? If you added up the Walton family, if Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, were still alive today, he would be worth twice as much as Bill Gates. If you add up his 5 heirs who are still alive, the Walton children, they would be worth twice as much as Bill Gates. And they did it pennies at a time, right? So there is no wrong answer in terms of what is your branding? Who are you targeting as a customer? It goes back to that niche marketing that we talked about in one of our previous webinars. But you do kind of have to pick an image that you're putting out into the world. All of these are valid, and they're all there. So there's no wrong answer. You just need to be consistent, right? You need to have a consistent presentation of who you are, who you serve, what problem you solve, right? So that it works well. I love this picture. As I was kind of digging out things for consistency here, we've got a hipster dude selling to a hipster lady. That's what it looks like to me anyway, right? She's got the little nose ring there. She's kind of got that I don't care hair, it's neat enough, but a little floppy. She has to keep getting it out of her eyes. And he's got the enigmatic beard with the waxed mustache there. He's trying to look really cool. But he's wearing the nice button-down suit and everything to look great. These people are going to resonate with each other, right? There's a level of consistency of the brand, even though, he's a professional. Okay. So keys to your branding consistency, right? It's not just about your business cards and your t-shirt and what your website looks like. It's kind of runs all the way through. Okay. So consistency takes commitment. I hope you've seen it, and if you haven't, put it on your weekend watching. The Founder with Michael Keaton, and he plays Ray Kroc, the founder, sort of, in quotes, the founder in quotes of McDonald's, right? So the basic story, if you haven't seen it, this won't ruin it too much. Ray Kroc didn't start McDonald's, but he started McDonald's as you know it. Let's put it that way. A lot of that went into the McDonald's story is consistency, not just consistency of product, right? So that if you think about the world before McDonald's, you could drive across the country and you never knew if food was safe to eat. You never knew how long it was going to take to get. You were just not going to be able to get consistent food quality driving across the country. But now, if I stop at a McDonald's here in Austin, Texas, or one in New York City, or one in California, a Big Mac is a Big Mac is a Big Mac everywhere you go. It's going to be the same texture, same quality. It's going to taste the same. It's going to have the same amount of two-all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. It's going to be the same everywhere. And that matters, right? There's no variability. And they've taken it to the extreme at a place like McDonald's, right? Now, the franchise model. But the same should be true in every business, right? Consistency in the way that your customer experiences you, and the way that you market to them, and the way that they hit you. So, think about your target customer. What makes that person tick? What do they like? What do they dislike? What type of language do they use when they interact? What type of Google searches are they using? What are they following on Facebook and Twitter and so forth? You can get incredibly granular nowadays, right? If you wanted to only target one, Christian business owners, or Republican business owners, or Democrat business owners, or business owners in a specific state, or people who are rural, right? Or people who have children, right? You can get down to that type of stuff. You can look for people who also like the pages of Mercedes and BMW or Kia, right? You can target specifically to a persona of an individual so that you fit their needs and their ego. As I said, ego is hugely powerful, and it surprisingly drives a lot of things. And I'm sure you come across customers all the time where, one recommendation might be for them, like, hey, you might consider making some dramatic changes in your business, but they don't want to make those dramatic changes. They'd rather just bring on some external capital and think they can solve the problem that way. That's ego sometimes. And ego can work for you so long as you're playing to their ego in the right way. Think about your value proposition from a consistency perspective. When you describe your business, do you describe it the same way? We help you solve X problems. As if you remember back to the niche marketing webinar, we talked about saying a specific type of customer. So we help technology companies solve their short-term cash flow problems. That's a really good value proposition. And you start repeating it often, and you hone that message, and you make sure your team knows we help technology companies solve short-term cash flow problems. Right? If that's your target market and that's what you do for them, find some, call it a tagline if you will, some tagline that you can use over and over and over again. So not only do you remember it and your team remembers it, but pretty soon your customer knows. And when they see a technology company that has a short-term cash flow problem, they're coming to you. Right? That's what a brand does. It creates ease. It reduces the friction of when people think of what they need. When they think of luxury cars, they think of Mercedes, they think of BMW. As nice as a Kia is, people do not associate Kia with luxury car, even though it has a lot of what we consider to be luxury features in it. It's got power windows, heated seats, and all that good jazz. We don't think of it as a luxury car because it's a pricing, it's a down brand. Okay? Again, but multi-billion-dollar company. Then think about your presentation. Is it consistent with your value proposition? If you're going to tech companies as an example, if that's who you're targeting, does your logo and your print and your website and email and all, does it look like it's talking to people in the tech industry? Right? Your phone voice and your script that's on the phone when you have a sales script, does it sound like you're talking to people in the tech industry? Are you using similar language to them? Or do you sound like somebody who's calling up carpenters and people in the construction industry? Again, very valuable industry, nothing wrong with that niche, but you don't necessarily talk to those people the same way. And your branding will sound off if you're talking like you were talking to construction workers, if you're calling on somebody in the tech industry. It's just not the same. So what are your competitors missing? This helps in your branding message as well. I actually was talking to one of the, I won't give too many details, but one of the ISOs that was on last month's webinar. We had a really good conversation afterwards. And, he had some really strong beliefs that they were firing on certain cylinders that their competitors were missing in terms of just the relationship and the engagement they had with their customers and the way they sought to solve the customer's problems. And I think they had done a fabulous job of the entire team understood it, right? From a leadership perspective, the owner of the firm really got it, knew what he wanted to do, knew that developing these long-term relationships with his customers in a certain manner with a certain value or values behind it and commitment, he knew that that would bring repeat business, and he knew that it would bring lots of referrals in the future, and it was the best thing for the client. That was fantastic to hear, right? Is that happening in your business? Are you thinking about like what type of commitment are we making to our customers? What are our competitors missing? What do we think competitors are dropping the ball on, right? If you were putting yourself in the position of a small business owner and you say you needed $50,000 in the next 2 weeks to fix things, and you went to one of your competitors' websites, what would you think of it? What would be your first impression? Would you want to click call me or fill out their contact form? Do you trust them? Is there an element of trust on their website, or is it just kind of feel like they're a little shady, right? If you talk to them, if you ever called them on the phone, frankly, have you called your own phone? Was it the experience that you would like for yourself if you were in a position of needing to raise capital for your business? What are the things that you know you can do better than them? And sometimes it's just, hey, I think we can make a nicer looking, cleaner looking website than somebody. I think presentation value looks better, right? I think I can make a better phone script than this person. I think I can sound more reassuring and comforting and welcoming to this person, right? Anyway, those are the types of things that we're targeting, right? So look at your competitors and look for holes in their game. Okay, so branding Mojo here, cruising right along. So Mojo is kind of like magic, right? It's undescribable. If you remember the Austin Powers kind of had his mojo, right? Undescribable, can't put your finger on it, thing that made him awesome, right? Comedy version of it. But you know, there is sometimes you really can't describe, like, what is it? What's that thing about that makes this company awesome? So one of the things that I found over the years, and doing a little bit of research to kind of validate some of this, is impressions matter. What was the experiences you have? Sometimes you're on the phone with somebody, or you see their social media posts, even if you're not in the market to buy their stuff immediately. Like, for instance, I don't eat Oreos all that often. I don't buy Oreos. I do like them, but I just don't buy them. But Oreos has a fantastic. If you ever follow them on social media, they're amazing. You almost want to follow them just because they do such a good job, right? So the whole, like, you know, quote by Mr. Nobody Ever, you know, I think you've dumped that cookie enough, right? Nobody says that, right? So it's kind of a little joke. People laugh and giggle to themselves, and they feel good about themselves. So the recent study done by Fast Company that studied brands around the world and figured out what makes a consumer, and this is true of business too, what makes somebody resonate with a brand. And it's surprisingly not just color and not just trustworthiness and how long has a brand been around, which, I don't sure how, customers care that you have some history. They don't care that much, right? Amazing number of financial companies that'll tell you that they've been around since 1875. But I don't care. I guess I don't want you to have just opened your doors last week, so don't advertise that, but really, how does that help me that you've been around since 1875, right? But connecting with me on an emotional level does matter, right? Are you funny? Are you like pleasing to talk to, right? Is your website pleasing to look at? Are the emails that you send to me written in human language, right? Are you using the hard sell, or are you using the collaborative and educational based selling techniques, or it's something that makes me feel comfortable? Imagine the person who's calling you is pretty stressed, right? Taking the edge off of a little bit of humor, a little bit of comforting tone, good bedside manner, as they call it in the medical profession, that might be helpful. Are you sharing stuff that's useful to them? That's commonly overlooked, right? That just is something useful. Are you giving people useful information? So sometimes you'll see, like in the marketing world, you'll see infographics and so forth. Pearl Capital does a fantastic job of producing high quality content that they put out there for ISOs to help them in their business. And this, hopefully, as you're experiencing this, is the webinar experience is part of it, right? The articles that we're producing and so forth are stuff that's useful and hopefully helpful to you in your business. And hopefully that results in you bringing more deals to Pro Capital. The things about being beautiful and inspiring, number 3 and 4 here, it's surprising how often that works, right? Just something that looks nice. There's a reason why an iPhone sells so much, right? There's lots of other phones out there. Some of them just don't look as good as the iPhone. They don't feel as nice as the iPhone, right? It's just an experience, right? A lot of the commercials you see for iPhones, by the way, are not touting it's this fast, it has this much memory, it's really rugged, right? What do? They show you the experience that somebody can have. They're taking pictures of their kids. They're having FaceTime chats with a soldier overseas with his kids. It's just, it's brings tears to your eye type of thing. That's the connection with the brand. So emotions are everything. How do your customers feel about you and your company? And by the way, that's connected. You and the sales team that you have working with you are very related. One bad apple in the sales bunch, right, can spoil everything. If you're trying to put this comforting and collaborative and educational tone out there into the world that we are great to work with, and we're not going to try to scare you into a deal that doesn't work for you type of approach, and one person just pushing too hard, that can just leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth and kind of spoil everything, right? So how do your customers feel about you and your company? Make sure that it's consistent with what you're trying to get them to feel. And by the way, hard sell, what we call challenge sales, are fine, by the way. Challenge sales work. One of my clients uses a challenge sale all the time, and they have built a very large multi-million-dollar company using the challenge sale, and they're calling on small business owners. And they're challenging them that, hey, if you're not getting the results you want, you got to be using our product. That's a reality. Challenge sales do work, but make sure it's consistent. You can have one person doing challenge sales and everybody else doing something completely different, right? You got to get some consistency in there so people know what to expect. Okay, colors. Now, many people, when they think about branding, they think about color, right? They think about the logo, or you think about the website and all the print material that goes on. But a lot of time, people aren't paying as much attention to the color. Now, you may have a favorite color. It could be red, it could be blue, or whatever. But having some semblance of an understanding of what color does to people is important, right? Red can mean danger, it can mean passion, it can mean excitement and energy when used appropriately. So make sure you have some feeling of what the color means. Now, they're not hard and fast rules, by the way. There's sometimes you see red, and again, you're feeling passion, you're feeling energy and excitement, and sometimes you see red and you're just like, yeah, it's just nice, whatever, right? But there are some subliminal psychological stuff, emotional responses that people have to color. So just be aware of them. Really good article here, link down below. And when you get the PDF of this, you'll be able to click on this by Canva and their design school, Color, Meaning, and Symbolism. So take a quick read of that, get a good feel for it, and then ask yourself, when you look at your materials, what emotional response might somebody be getting when they look at your site? Okay, making a promise. This is a great way to get some branding mojo. Right? Everybody remembers Domino's 30 minutes or it's free ads, and they had to change that, right, for because drivers were driving a little recklessly. But they still kind of have their 30-minute delivery commitment. And what they do is they stick to that promise by offering you a coupon, right, if they don't deliver within 30 minutes, right? So if they miss their window, and there are certain times of the day I know where they'll take the 30-minute promise off during high traffic times or whatever, but the point is, they are making a promise to the customer in their branding, in their messaging, and they're sticking to it. Your customers value lots of stuff, and not everybody values the same thing, but find out what they value and see if you can make a promise to hit that value. So as an example, time, right? Speed of delivery in the case of Domino's. For you, it's how quickly can I get my money? Like, how fast can you get me as a small business owner the merchant cash advance I need in order to solve my cash flow constraints? Is it 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 weeks? Big difference there, right? a commitment to speed. Pricing is a big driver for some people, not everybody, right? Sometimes people don't care about price. When we went through the webinar on niche marketing, we talked about the woman who focused on widows, right? Her target market was so nailed down that she had found a segment that didn't care about pricing. Same thing. So pricing doesn't matter all the time, but sometimes it does. Quality, ego, right? You deserve the best type of stuff. Fairness and honesty. We see this all the time. People sometimes want clarity. They don't want to see hidden fees and so forth. Just tell me you do what you say. Handshake type mentality, right? That all this stuff matters. Find the things that you can commit to, make a promise on it, work that into your branding, your messaging, and stick to those things. You can win a lot just on that. So improving your brand today. So here's some tips as promised for improving your brand. They're low cost, a few $100 tops. Many of them could be free basically. Low cost ways to make sure that your brand resonates with your customers. The first one, and this is free, ask for recommendations. Sounds silly, right? You're going to ask a customer for a recommendation. How's that going to help with branding? It does a few things. Number one, it's a good reminder to the customer that, hey, like, I helped you solve a problem. I'd love to have your recommendation. I value your opinion. Please tell me. And then when you get a recommendation on LinkedIn, guess what? Everybody sees that you've got a recommendation on LinkedIn. It kind of broadcasts to the world. And so it's kind of like a social reinforcement thing. And so it's a really good deal. But it also forces the person who, if they choose to do it, forces them, meaning in the nicest way, not forces them like gunpoint way, but it forces them nicely to think about the value of your service and what it meant to them. And so if you ask them to, hey, tell me what I'd love to have a recommendation from you. You're a really great customer. Could you just describe like what you valued most about working with me? And then see what they do. And if you get enough of those, a handful, even with 10 or 15, it'll be a really good way for you to get an assessment of what do customers value about you, what should be in your brand, what do they see your brand as, right? So sometimes you think it's one thing and the customer thinks it's something different. You thought it was price, and they said, no, it was the fact that you had clarity, and I felt like I could trust you, that there was no hard sell. That might be something. Or you got me my money quick. You were faster than everybody else. I talked to lots of people, and nobody could get me money within 6 days, and you got me money within 24 hours or 48 hours. Awesome, you're the best. Okay, so check with your customers, and LinkedIn's a fantastic tool, totally free to ask for recommendations there. Do a survey. This one you can do it on the cheap, or you can use some tools that are out there like SurveyMonkey, which is what I have linked up here in that quick survey hyperlink. So when you get this, you'll be able to click on that. They actually have a branding survey there you can customize and do it yourself, but they have one that's pre-built. It's meant for like more big established brands. But questions that I would ask is, like we were just talking about, what was the most important thing in making your decision process? Right? If you sent me business or you were evaluating business, even if you didn't choose me, you were a prospect, what was your most important thing that you were looking for? Ask them what your brand says to them, right? Well, be honest, be brutally honest. This is an anonymous survey. Tell me what you think of my brand, right? If you were to refer, a colleague, how would you describe us? If you were to Google what I do, right, the service I provide, what would you search for? That'll give you some. You can change the wording here. You can think about some different things, but you're really trying to suss out, right? Is how do they describe what you do and what they're looking for and what's important to them about it? And then I like the other little thing I came up with here is, what else do they like? When I interview people, I will often ask Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. It kind of tells me something about somebody. It's a fun thing. It doesn't say like whether they're a good person or a bad person, but it tells me a lot, right? If you're a Starbucks person or a Dunkin' Donuts person, one is you really, when you like more robust coffee, like you're more into the kind of coffee experience. But Dunkin' Donuts people are loyal as heck, right? Doesn't work as much here in Austin, Texas, because we have 2 Dunkin' Donuts, I think, in the over metro area, whereas up in the Northeast, you can't swing a stick without hitting 5 of them. But you can ask some questions, kind of the either or, would you rather type questions, and you can learn a little bit about what the customer values and what brands they associate with. This one's a fun one. It does cost money, right? I call it rebranding as an exercise. So if you look at your website and your logo and everything, and you're like, it's time to step up my game, or I think it's due for a refresh. There are services like 99 Designs, and there's plenty of others out there, and I get like no referral fee or anything like from any of these. It's just the one that I've used in the past, 99 Designs. I think they do a good job too, and it's cheap. So a few $100, you can do a logo and brand identity package. And what you'll experience when you do that is they will take you through a series of questionnaires asking you, like, describe your brand. Like, what are some brands you like, right? What do you do for your customers? Talk to me about websites you like, the whole bunch of different questions. And then they'll basically take all that stuff and they'll send it out to their network of designers. And those designers will come back with their bids, right? This is what I'm thinking would look good for your logo type of experience. And then you make your choice. But one of the really cool thing is, not only do you get to experience, like, here's all these other ideas of how I could present myself to the world, but there's a little bit of a survey thing. You can pick your final 3, 4, 5, whatever, and send those out to your team, your customers, and what have you, and ask their opinions. Which one speaks most to like who we are and what we do as a company? Which one do you like best? And you get a better feel about that, right? So it's a really good way to engage your customers, engage your team, and really start thinking through, what is our brand in the world? Okay, challenge time. Just like the end of every webinar we have here, your 30-day challenge. What are you going to do after this webinar? Right. So next steps. The first thing is develop a tagline. Spend some time and involve your team if you have a team. If it's just you or you're a solo ISO, no big deal. 10 words or less. Develop a tagline, right? We help tech companies solve short-term cash crunches or whatever. Find out what it is that you do. Can you describe it in 10 words? Is it something you can put in your email signature? Something that you can put on your bio? The quick description if you have a Twitter account for your company, right? What would you say your company does? Get a tagline. You think about BMW, the ultimate driving machine. You go down a lot of different brands, and there's a little bit of a tagline there, and it's meant to convey an emotional branding connection. What's yours, right? So do that. Spend a few minutes. This can be like a half an hour in total over the course of a month, but do a bit of a brand audit. Look at your website, your email, your social media, print materials. Call your own phone queue, as I mentioned earlier. What picture does it paint of your company and the brand? Sounds really easy, but you'll be surprised at how many times a company will go like, look, my print materials doesn't even look like the same color scheme as my website, and we say we will hold your hand, but when you call our website, we call our phone number, we're kind of abrupt on the phone. Think about, just make sure it's consistent, right? Do a bit of a brand audit and see if it's, first of all, consistent, and secondly, is it who you want to be? Revisiting your niche, right? Who do you want your brand to resonate with, and does what you have out there in the world now, does it resonate with those people? If not, all right, revisit it. Think about it. What would I have to do to resonate with people who are kind of no nonsense, easy, if they're in the construction industry, right? They just want to know it works. They want to talk about fine print and details and so forth. They just want to get it done type of human. Does your stuff project that? And then lastly, connect and survey. And bonus, it's always funny when you're building your presentation and the bonus kind of comes at the end, but it's kind of the big aha moment. I truly believe this. Half of branding is planting a seed for recall. The number of times that somebody in the future that was either a customer of yours or a prospect of yours or somebody you just know will have the opportunity to send business to you or to one of your competitors, it's staggering the number of times that will happen. What's frightening is, though, how often people will forget you if you're not staying in touch with them, right? You can have the best brand in the world, but if people don't see it for 3, 4, 5 years, and then the opportunity comes for them to send you business, they're not going to send you business because they just forgot all about you. So connecting on social, using your email marketing and other communication tools to consistently stay on top of mind is so important. And to me, that is half of all branding, because all the other branding exercises we talked about in terms of, choosing the right logo and taglines and all that type of stuff, they just die if people forget about you. And that's the reason why, commercials are repeated all the time, right? That's why when a certain brand is like on billboards and in magazines and on websites, and it's because they don't want you to forget about them, right? They want to follow you around. Remarketing, if you're using digital marketing on online, is so powerful for that very reason. I don't want you to forget about me. So give that some thought. Make sure that you're staying in touch. So that brings us to the end of the form webinar. Here comes my favorite part. We always have some Q&A at the end here. So let's open the floor for questions. If you're not comfortable asking a question here in a public forum, you can feel free to shoot me an email or ping me on Twitter. Always available. If there's something specific to Pearl Capital, like how do they do business, or what is a specific, anything that's approval process related or whatever, please do reach out to Pearl directly for those. But I'll do my best to answer anything that's marketing related. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you next month at our next webinar. If you have suggestions for what you'd like to see covered, please do feel free to send those in. If there's something you feel is missing, or you have some particularly strong marketing topics that you'd like to see covered, happy to do that. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye.